Hey everybody, this is Paul doing a quick video. Uh, Today is the 1st. It's 11:13 a.m. and the market is currently open, as you can see, kind of rallying back after yesterday's sell-off. And I guess let's kind of go over some data, some worries, like some actual real worries that I have about this market. Um, just in different things to try and explain what's going on right now. So I guess this is a good example right here of kind of what's going on right now. So like, you turn on CNBC and they're talking about Amazon, or like, they're just doing their intraday stuff, like, what should they buy and what's overvalued and what might not be overvalued. But they're kind of ignoring the big issue in the background that's going on right now, in my opinion. So yesterday, Jerome Powell got on TV and said that, we're not going to really do a cut in March. And this is kind of what the bond market did. So I took a screenshot off of Twitter because I don't have access to a Bloomberg because I'm not paying 20 grand a year for it. Should pull up here in a second. So basically, all this shows is like, different odds that things are going to happen. And as you can see, basically, the market expects a very quick. So there's a 35% chance that there's going to be a cut in March now, as you can see right here. So these are the dates of the Fed meetings and whatnot. And you can kind of see, so basically they think it's going to be a 5.23 here, you know, from where it's at now. So where it's at now. But by June now, all of a sudden they're pricing in, there's a 50 basis point difference now. There's just different cuts. They're expecting the first cut to really be in. So 89% chance of a cut in May now. And that's kind of how this has been going. So these average, these percents go up and down, and then they're expecting a 100% chance of there being a cut in June. I think there's either going to be one of two things that happens, and I'll show you why. What I'm saying, because the jobs report is really good. Unemployment claims are kind of elevated on the long-term unemployment people. But that's in California, New York, those types of things. Other states, they're not having these problems. Here's the problem. They announced that they were going to term out the BTFP program, which I've been calling the Buy the Fed Put program. And what that program is, it basically allows banks to say, hey, you have all this garbage on your balance sheet. We will give you a loan against that garbage as if that garbage was worth something. So if you have a bond that, is only yielding 2%, somebody's mortgage or whatever, we'll give you a loan against that as if you're able to sell that bond for the full price. In reality, if they tried to sell a 2% bond yielding portfolio or something like that, or a treasury, for example, that's yielding some because we have 10 years worth of rates being at zero, basically. So these banks are just holding garbage, and that has not changed. And the longer that these rates stay higher, the more that garbage is worthless. So here's the problem. NYCB is the bank that inherited all of Signature Bank's problems, it seems. And they reported they were going to expect it to report a $45 billion loss. Well, they are $45 million loss. Well, it was a $500 million loss. And the CEO kind of got put on the spot and couldn't really give a good answer. And this is how it spreads. This is how the confidence issue spreads until these banks, because what's going to happen is the next regional bank that comes out and says, oh, because you got to remember, if BTFP is not there, they can't shore up their balance sheets anymore. So I have to keep explaining to, I guess, people who live in New York that don't understand how the world works outside of New York. At least in Louisiana, regional banks are king. That's how stuff gets done down here. Um, like there's everything gets processed, everything gets financed through a regional bank in this area, especially First Horizon. First Horizon has their fingers in a lot of things in South Louisiana, and they're everywhere. But as you can see, this one bank right here, it was down 40% yesterday. It's down another 11%. And what does this sound like? We've seen how this plays out. This looks exactly like First Republic. And this is some bank that nobody's ever heard of, but as you can see, it is spreading. the KRE. So the market is currently up, as you can see here. Market is currently up 35. These are the companies that are up. That's what's selling. But when you look at the regional banks, it's a bloodbath. This is kind of what happened before. Now the problem is that if a bank is already basically about to fail, this is gone. Nobody's gonna stay here. And you can't just keep taking 11% losses every day. You might see a minor bounce on it, but there's no good news that could possibly come out of this. Unless the Federal Reserve comes back out and says, hey, we're extending the BTFP program, there's no good news that's going to come out of this bank. This bank, I told somebody on Twitter, I was like, this bank's dead by Friday. I'll be amazed if this bank makes it through the weekend because of how quick you can just transfer your money out of it to something else. So, but the BTFP program isn't being extended. So what's going on is now that you have a confident issue in one bank, here's where it spreads. Spreads from this bank, spreads to that bank. Here's another bank. I can guarantee Regions Financial is down. Look, 3.62%. They're all these are all local banks for me, but as you can see, KRE is down 4% already. It was down 3% yesterday. It's a 7% loss in less than a day, and the BTFP program hasn't been. It's still there, but because it's going to expire, the confidence game has already started, and it doesn't help that NYCB CEO sounded very unsure on that call about if the losses had been done. So you have to start watching the regionals again to see if the Fed has to step in again. If the Fed steps in again, then there's your band-aid. Here's your band-aid on top of your regionals again. But the longer that rates are at these levels, like you can't repair these balance sheets. They have no way of getting rid of this stuff that's on their balance sheet. Like these banks are just holding loans, they're holding bonds, they're holding mortgages that are worthless. If you tried to sell them, nobody would want them. So the longer that these rates are this high, the longer that you're going to run into problems. And this is where the credit issue comes from. Like this is how credit crisis is spread. Because if they term out the BTFP program, they just say it's done, you're going to see the regionals fall through the floor. We're back in March of 2023 again, as if nothing ever happened. And it's so weird that everybody has this weird amnesia about that period, but that's what it is. So outside of that, obviously, we got Q4 GDP came in really, really strong, as expected. I mean, people were spending like there was no tomorrow. That last 2 weeks of December was ridiculous. I would love to know how much of just this last little part right here, this part right here in consumer spending is just the last 2 weeks of December because it was insane. And you could tell people that basically put all that on credit cards and buy now, pay later because like December has been rough on like say DoorDash and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if retail sales is kind of pretty weak in January. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. So like for example, this is claims as you can see, still very low. There's just different things. So you've heard of like the Magnificent Seven in the U.S. This, for example, Holger, this guy's last name here, if you want to follow him on Twitter, he is like Germany all day long. But we have the Magnificent Seven in the U.S. that's been propping up the entire stock market. It's a very, very narrow market right now. And in Germany, they have what they call the Magnificent Five. Germany is in a flat-out recession. Everything that comes out of Germany is just a mess right now. All their indicators are flat, flashing red recession. But this is what their stock market is doing, going through the roof, as these certain specific stocks have just been running like there's no tomorrow, as you can clearly see. Like they went from, so this is kind of their version of the QQQ, I guess if you want to call it that. But as you can see, the thing is just completely run. So it's not just a U.S. phenomenon; it's definitely around the world. Um, but this is just another thing with the GDP on it. Um, so I think like my only real concern right now is the different regionals and when does the Fed notice this and have to step in. And if they extend the BTFP program, whatever, it doesn't hurt anything. The only thing that they had to fix was the ability of banks to like borrow from the BTFP program and then sell back to the Federal Reserve at a higher rate, or sell back at a higher rate. Somehow they were doing some weird thing where they were getting a lot of money on something they weren't supposed to be getting money on. It's basically you could borrow at a lower rate from BTFP and then sell at a higher rate or something. It's some weird thing, but I don't know the plumbing of how the Federal Reserve works. So don't ask me. But they shut that down. That was something they shut down immediately, and these things started reacting almost immediately. But if they don't extend BTFP, we're pretty much back in March 2023 when it comes to the regionals, if you ask me. I think KRE is going to go through the floor. I have no exposure to this because I don't trust any of the regional stocks right now. It's been a good trade up until this point, but once that expires, I mean, this is kind of what you watch. So even though you have the market doing this, these things are not responding. And this is what the bond market, I think, is looking at. The Federal Reserve is screaming at the market, we're not going to cut in March. We're not going to cut in March. But the market is telling them, yeah, you're probably going to cut in March. You've hit peak rates. You're probably going to cut in March. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes, especially closer to March. So some minor updates. I guess this is tax season. So for example, I don't think by the 15th, but by the 29th for sure, this will just be up 2 grand, as that's what I'll pull out of my tax return to put towards this. So somewhere in this will be an extra 2 grand. So I should be breaking 70K by the end of February for sure, I would hope, unless the market just utterly tanks. Just to give you a general idea of how the market's been just flying around, moving around on me. Um, I'll do these quick little updates real fast just to show you. Um, so I'll just do these real fast. But as you can see, yesterday I think my portfolio was down 400, and now it's up 611 as the market is just, my portfolio responds directly to rates because it's very dividend focused. So whenever long end rates come down, anything over like the 10-year, that kind of thing, my portfolio immediately responds, and as you can see, it's pretty healthy response. So there we are. So for the month of January, I was up 1,300, but as you can see, I pulled a lot of money from DoorDash into that, 2 grand just about. And then just today alone, you can see 635 because I have multiple portfolios and I just only updated the E-Trade one that you saw. But as it stands right now, I have been building up a cash position in this right here because it's a 5% checking account effectively. Um, so my focus is still BBN, or it's this right here. That's pretty much my only focus right now. I see nothing else that's catching my eye right now with the market this expensive until I see rates, until I see the Federal Reserve come out and literally say we're cutting rates. And we're going to cut rates because we want to cut them and not because something's crashing. So, but that still looks like May, which is incredible that they would stick that long, but it does sound like May. But like I said, the only two things that matter are the CPI report. That's it. That's all that matters. As long as the CPI report keeps coming down, we're fine. But we got to keep watching that, so we'll definitely have to see how that goes. But leave a comment, let me know what you think. Y'all have a nice day.